Giving you a live look out now at 6:28 on the East Coast there in Rafah, and you can see several displaced people because of the Israel-Hamas war. We know Palestinians who fled that ongoing Israeli raid of Gaza's main hospital describe mass arrests and forced marches past bodies. All of this while the United Nations says Israel is blocking its main agency helping Palestinians from sending food aid to the enclave's devastated north. Israel's military saying they've killed more than 170 militants and detained about 480 suspects in the raid on Al-Shifa hospital that began Monday. Joining us this morning to shed more light on this ongoing conflict is senior lecturer in criminal justice and homeland security, Mr. Ken Gray. Mr. Ken, good morning to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Janae. Glad to be with you.
Glad to have you. So many developments since over the weekend. I first want to start about those Israeli military raids on Al-Shifa hospital and those Palestinians discussing how they were having to walk over dead bodies just to find another area to now live.
Yeah, Al-Shifa hospital has become a stronghold for Hamas members who are still there in Gaza City. The fighting has been ongoing for the last week, and this very intense fighting at times. And in the process of trying to clear out the hospital so as to be able to totally clear it of Hamas members, they are having to take people who are seeking refuge inside that building. After all, most of the buildings in the surrounding area have been destroyed or badly damaged. People inside Al-Shifa hospital were having to be cleared out of the hospital so as to be able to then search for Hamas members and weapons there within the hospital. And so as they were coming out because of the intense fighting, the people who had been inside the hospital seeking refuge there were stepping over bodies and body parts while trying to be cleared out of the hospital. Very ugly scene going on there.
I can only imagine. And then knowing now more people are displaced. I popped that picture up there on the screen, Mr. Ken, just putting it into perspective as this humanitarian crisis looms amid the war. I want to now transition to these claims from the United Nations saying that Israel is actually blocking some of their committees from delivering aid to those displaced Palestinians. Break these claims down. And I also want to mention that some are saying this is just a retaliation accusation in response to what Israel was saying about UNRWA several weeks ago about them allegedly holding on to some of the hostages. Break all of this down for us, Mr. Ken.
Sure. UNRWA, the Relief and Workers Agency for the UN, some of their members have been accused of assisting Hamas by the IDF. And so there is bad blood between the IDF and UNRWA. There's 1.2 million people that have been forced down into the southern part of the Gaza Strip, and they are forced up right up against the fence there, separating the Gaza Strip from Egypt. And so this is an area that has come under a lot of pressure. There's not enough food. There's not enough water. UNRWA is trying to deliver supplies there for this large number of people that are there camping out in that area because they were forced to move there so that the IDF could clear the rest of the Gaza Strip. And so UNRWA has said that the IDF has stopped them from being able to deliver those supplies. Whether that's true or not, we don't know. There aren't any independent observers in there to be able to give us that information. But humanitarian aid is necessary to be able to get to these people. They are without food, they are without water, and so times are desperate there at the southern end of the Gaza Strip. There are starvation about to occur here. So this is a very bad situation.
So many great points you just posed, and it makes me want to ask you, as we were discussing UNRWA, and there were those accusations that they were helping Hamas house hostages. I want to ask you, what do you think is the validity of these claims that some of these UN committees are actually stealing some of this aid, simply because we've seen several photos and proof that Hamas was actually taking some of the aid and food and supplies meant for Palestinians. So if some of these UNRWA workers were in fact aiding Hamas, could you potentially see them also taking the aid to get to Hamas and even keep for themselves potentially?
Well, I don't think UNRWA needs to take the food for themselves, but I do think it's possible that some are aligned with Hamas, with their goals. And so it's possible that some of them have helped Hamas against the Israelis. Once you bring humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, it has to be distributed. UNRWA is that agency that is supposed to be distributing the goods once they come into the country, and they're not making it to the Palestinians, the civilians there. In some cases, it's because of the lack of security forces along with them. That is, as soon as the aid comes into the country, it's being grabbed by the Palestinians, who are in very dire need. They're desperate. So the lack of the Palestinian civilian police that had been providing the security for that aid is no longer doing so, because they had come under fire by the IDF, and IDF had come under fire by them. And so this is just an ugly situation going on there. But nonetheless, these accusations are being made on both sides, by UNRWA and by IDF.
Absolutely, a blame game on both sides. And I'm glad you mentioned the IDF to segue into my next question. As we know, from the very beginning, they said this is not a war against Palestinians. This is a war against Hamas. As we look forward to the next few hours, we know the United Nations will be meeting today to discuss a resolution and potentially vote on it for a ceasefire agreement. With all of these developments over the weekend, what's the likelihood that there will be a vote amid all of the discussion about the conflicts? We know there was a vote last week, but it was shot down.
Well, there was a vote on Friday, which the United States vetoed. And then there was supposed to be a vote on Saturday, but that was postponed. I believe that there will likely be a vote today. There's supposed to be a vote today. Because the resolution calls for an immediate ceasefire, I expect the United States to veto it again, because the United States proposal, which was vetoed back on Thursday, calls for linking the ceasefire to the release of the hostages. The resolution that will be voted on potentially today has no such linkage there, and consequently, the United States sees that as being counter to the attempt to have the hostages released as part of this resolution. And so I expect to see a vote potentially today from the UN Security Council. Expect, if it does have a vote today, I imagine that the United States will probably veto it again, just simply because of the lack of the connection to the hostages. There are 5 permanent members: the United States, France, the UK, China, and Russia. And then there are 10 other players that changes from year to year. And so the United States has the ability to stop any resolution from going forward. All it takes is one vote to stop it.
Thank you so much for breaking all of that down, Mr. Ken. As we look ahead and as this conflict continues, is there anything else you'd like to add as it relates to the Israel-Hamas war?
So I think the thing to keep your eye on is that vote today. It should occur sometime in the next couple of hours. And so I think that that a lot will ride on that vote. If it were to pass, then that may be the start of the cessation of hostilities there at the Gaza Strip.